Okay, hello everyone. Um, so I'm going to I'm gonna learn we're gonna learn the Arba Bנים. A lot of kashas. We'll try to start off with teretz and answer, and we'll learn it together. And maybe Bez Hashem we can come out with an intelligent mahalach and hopefully some life lessons. So we start over here. Baruch Hamakam Baruch Hu. Melech doesn't tell Am Yisrael Baruch Hu. So you start. So right off the bat. We say Baruch Hamakum, and so the shadow is why is it saying Baruch Hamakum, and then why is it repeating Baruch Hu again? It says Baruch Shalom Yisrael Baruch Hu. And so again, so you're saying Baruch Shalom Yisrael, and you're saying Baruch Hu again. What's the deal with that? Why is it saying separately? The Rambam actually has them together. Baruch Hamakum Asher Nasan Ter LaAm Yisrael Baruch Hu. The Rambam actually has them together. Here there's a Baruch Hu in the middle, so it's interesting to understand what that would mean. And then you have Keneged Arba Banim Dibur Torah. Okay, so the Torah spoke Keneged 4 sons. Before we even examine some of the texts that got the actual children, it is a bit of a plea to really internalize what it is exactly that the Haggadah wants from us here. I mean, right now we're being Mikayim, the mitzvah of Megat to the Bincha. Okay, what does it mean, and what is the idea? How does it work? Why is it so that you would have a mitzvah, and the mitzvah would somehow, within the Torah, would be acknowledging 4 different types of people for who the recipients of the mitzvah would be? I mean, l'chara, we don't find this in any sort of mitzvah ever. You have a mitzvah of haggada, you tell it to your son, whatever your son might be, your son is. Like, what is this idea that the Torah spoke k'neged 4 different types of children? It's a very strange, not found idea. You could be like being mechalik one mitzvah to 4 different mitzvahs based off what the appropriate response should be. I mean, in this logic, there's many mitzvahs that should be this way because different situations require different responses with different perspectives. So we know that there's a general yesod of in the pasuk. It's a chanoch narapidarkoi there. You have to mechanech someone according to the way that he is, according to his apidarkoi, his derech. So l'chaira, this whole idea seems to be not substantive. I mean, what do you mean that there's 4 categories of people: a chacham, a rasha, and a tam, and a delisha? I mean, first of all, maybe there's another type of person. Like, how do you categorize things in that manner? That's the kuda aleph. The kuda beis is, what is this? What are these categories? And what does it mean that the Torah talked k'neged them? It's a very strange lashon. You say, he said in the Torah, in the mitzvah, said to address them in this way. That is a lot of different things that we're wondering right there. And then the other thing is to really realize that if the Chazal are misakin to say that there are 4 different people in the Haggadah, and you're saying it, in other words, the Haggadah that we're actually saying we're not actually performing the mitzvah of Vihigata in the manner that we are saying each of these things to each of the children. In what we're actually doing. What we're actually doing is saying that the Torah says that there are these 4 types of children, and we're saying, now factually, when you're saying that there are 4 types of children, and this is what you would answer to each. That's what you're saying, but you're not actually doing the mitzvah of saying that to each type of child. And what if a person doesn't have a rasha or this or that? I mean, it's like it's very strange. I mean, even if you want to say that in a chanami there are these 4 categories, and Chazal are saying, and the Torah is saying you have to answer each one each way, so the Haggadah shouldn't be niskan that we're saying that there are 4 different types, and part of the Haggadah is for us to say that there are 4 different types. It should be whichever type you have, use the way that the Torah spoke to the Chacham, use that type in your Haggadah. How is it generically being niskan that you should say that there are 4 types, and that's a part of that Haggadah that you know that there are 4 types? It's very, very strange the way that what is actually occurring here. It's very strange. Okay, so then you go right and you say Chacham Bahoemer. So Chacham, what does the Chacham say? He says, Ma Eidos HaChukim HaMishpatim Asher Hashem Elokeinu Eschem. He says, what are the Eidos and the Chukim and the Mishpatim that Hashem our God commanded you? And then so, many people kind of ask this kasha that what shaykhis? What shaykhis is the response to the question? He wants to know what are the eidos and the chuluk mishpatim that Hashem commanded you guys, and then you say to him in maftir nachbez levikayim. It's very, very schwer what the response to the question is. Very hard to understand. And then you go weiter, and you go to Russia however. Now, even before you go weiter, the idea that there could be a Bain who is a Russia does not seem fathomable. When we think of a Russia, we think of somebody who is evil, someone who is Ra, someone who is a bad person. I mean, you're talking about, your child is asking you, Ma avodas lachem, and that child is a Russia? What does it mean that the child is a Russia? That whole way of understanding the Haggadah is just not even feasible. What does it mean, the Russia? The child that's a Russia? Your child is a Russia? What's proud in that? What does that even mean? The child's not a Russia. The child's he's barely an adult. He's not, who knows? I don't know if we're talking about, when you say bנים, we talk gil chinuch, not a gil chinuch. The mitzvah that applies for children that were in a gil chinuch. It's a din in the father that he should be mגיד to his son. So, you're talking about someone mistama, it's including someone who's not even 13 yet. He didn't even do averos or mitzvah. So what shaykh Russia? Ma avodas lachem v'lo. So he said lachem, and he didn't say Sanu. He didn't say Elokeinu like the Chacham did. Chacham said Elokeinu, and the Russia just said lachem and not him. Well, the Fisha is that's min klal kafar be'ikr, and because he removed himself from the klal, he was kafir be'ikr. Now, this is another thing. What on earth is Shai over here? What is this talking about? I don't know what any of the Kshari called the klal. If someone knows of it, they can let me know. But I don't know of any ikr that's called the klal. So what do you mean? Because you're a moiti asim in the klal, you're a kafir be'ikr? That doesn't seem to be an accurate statement. A kafir be'ikr means you deny Tchias HaMeisim, deny Mashiach, deny the Torah's origin, deny. There's a lot of different options, for you to be a kafir. But what does it mean? Because you're a moiti asim in the klal, kafar be'ikr. What does that statement mean? And why? How is that true? That's not even a true statement. Okay. V'af ata, and also you hake shinav. You should be make shinav, knock his teeth out. Ve'emor loy, ba'avor zeh Hashem li b'testim mitzrayim. You say to him, ba'avor zeh Hashem li b'testim li v'lo loy. Ilu Hashem lo yinegah. Right. So, simply speaking, this would be a very big shtuch to all the kiruv organizations. Right. In other words, and really, it's a kasha. What is it talking about? You should say to your son, who's somehow a Russia, even though he's not even a Gel Chinuch, even though he's not even a Gadol yet, say to him, don't say, oh, my son, I understand that, you're behaving this way now, and you think like this now, and, maybe your understanding of the world and the way that you behave is not the best, but let me explain to you what's going on, and let me try to help you understand and connect this thing. No, none of that. You say, you want to be a Russian and be in a klal? Boom, I'll knock out your teeth. You know what? You don't deserve to eat the Pesach, so you don't need your teeth. I'll knock them out, and you're not going to eat the Pesach, and it's not for you. And by the way, if you were in Egypt, you wouldn't have been redeemed. That's what you say to your son? It's a playas de gazach. What is this talking about? How does that make sense? It's one is that a mahalach. we have psukim aruchim. There's psukim, many psukim. It says that Giloich kel chafetz rasha Hashem. I mean, Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want Rishayim. He wants people. He wants us to be mekarev and to make sure that there aren't Rishayim and to help people who are Rishayim to stop being Rishayim and to be tzaddikim. It's like, what is the aside over here? What is this idea of what we're doing? That we're saying, Haki Ashinav. Just knock out his teeth and tell him that he would have been excluded. That seems to be a very, very bad version of chinuch of a child. And needs a big understanding of what this means. So, L'chayra, and then the last kasha by Russia, and this kasha maybe is the one that will give you an insight into what the Russia is that a Russia is at a place. You have a Sheni De'alisho, there's someone who lacks interest. You have a Tam is a simpleton. You have a Chacham is someone who's smart, he's curious, he wants to know, and so he goes ahead and he asks questions, and then you teach him halachas of Pesach. A Russia, in our minds, is an evil person. So besides the fact that it doesn't make sense that it could fit into the category of a Bain if he got to Levincha, it's very hard to understand how that could even fit. But besides for that, I would have thought that if you were going to go in this direction, then it would have been Tzaddik Ma'omer, Rasha Ma'omer, Tam Ma'omer, and the Sheni De'alisho. But a Rasha does not fit into the categories over here. A Chacham is not a Tzaddik, they're not the same thing. So you have a Chacham, and then you have a Tam who's a simpleton, that you understand. Someone who's simple, he can't really get into the complexities of things. And then you have a Sheni De'alisho, someone who lacks interest altogether. He's not really connected to the whole Indian, he's a little bit, separated from the whole thing, so you get him involved. Not psach. But a Russia just doesn't seem to fit into the categories of what's happening here. And it's therefore hard to understand how a Russia is an appropriate description of one of the categories of being that the Torah is talking k'neged. So those are the kashas that we will ask, and then we'll start to understand maybe what the Agada is saying, and maybe a bit of a teretz. So what we have to understand is like this. We know famously that Chazal say, and everybody knows, that the yesod of the word makom is the concept that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mekayim Shleilam. God is the Makim of the world. Right? So anybody who incorrectly perceives that Hashgacha Pratis means that God is in the world, and He's moving things around, is foolish, because God is not in the world. There's no such thing. Rather, all of Bria, all of creation, is simply an expression of the Rebbeinu Shalom existence. And the Rebbeinu Shalom's ratzon for it to be is what gives it existence, period. And therefore, Olam is Mekaimai. That is the simple pshat. So the world exists within the Rebbeinu Shalom and his ratzon, and the Rebbeinu Shalom is not in the world, but rather the world is in him. And what that acknowledges is that everything that is and occurs and happens and will happen is a direct, not result even. It is the expression of the ratzon of the Bari Olam. That's what Makom does, and that includes everything. And when we say Baruch, when we say the word Baruch doesn't mean bless. Baruch is essentially an acknowledgement of an occurrence to its source. And the reason why you know that doesn't really mean bless, although you could say that shot over there and as well if you want to say it means bless, is that we know that the famous Mishnah says, Geshem Shmuvarchin ala Taiva, Kach mevarichin al hara. You see, Baruch Atah Hashem, so whatever it is, he says, Dayan Emes, Baruch Dayan Emes, right? You make the bracha, you say Hashem's name, you make Dayan Emes. So, you're mevarich on the ra, just like the Taiva. It's not only on good things that you bless Hashem on, that you say Baruch on. It's even negative things. And therefore, really what Baruch ends up meaning is, Baruch is a way for the human being to align within himself the correct perspective that the thing that he is experiencing is a manifestation of the Boire and his Bria, and that everything is an expression of what he is. So, therefore, the Yesod of Baruch Makom is the exact same thing. He said Baruch HaMakom. So he said that is the Yesod of Baruch. And he said Baruch HaMakom is you're being mevarich HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the fact that he is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning he is the Holy One, blessed is he, meaning that he is the source of everything, and everything is only an expression of the reality of him. And so when you say Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, it's a recognition of God as being the source of everything, and therefore everything is a resource of him, and therefore you do, meaning the etzem idea of makom drives the concept that someone should be mavarich, but you're being mavarich the fact that you should be mavarich. In other words, it's like a dream within a dream, a darga within a darga. Makom means that everything that you experience is a manifestation of the Ribbon Shalom. The olam is makoimai, it's within him. And therefore, if you're going to properly have that perspective, that everything's a manifestation of the Ribbon Shalom, you make a bracha. A bracha is an acknowledgement that what you're experiencing is the Ratzon of the Ribbon Shalom. It is the Ribbon Shalom's, and it's him, and he's giving it to you. Right? And then, like Chazal say, Hashemayim Shemayim LaHashem, V'aretz Nasan Livnei Adam. Right? And it says, LaHashem Ha'aretzum Loya. It says, everything is Hashem's. So what does the Gemara bracha say? It says, Kan Lifnei Bracha, Kan La'achar Bracha. Right? And what that means is that really, it's Hashem Ha'aretzum Loya. When did he give it to you? He gives it to you once you recognize that it's his. That's when he gives it to you. So, Mimela, the idea of bracha is itself a reaction that a person has, and what we do to basically imbibe in ourselves the idea of makom, which is that everything is God and everything is his, because it's an expression of him, because nothing exists outside of the Ribbon Shalom, and everything that does exist is just a manifestation of his ratzon, of his wanting to. So this is the concept, and the same thing is Baruch Yisrael Baruch Hu. And you say it's Baruch Yisrael. The Baruch, the first Baruch is that he is the source of the Torah. God is the source of the Torah. That's that first Baruch. And the Baruch Hu is that you are acknowledging the acknowledgement which is the acknowledgement of the fact that God is the source of the Torah. The first Baruch is the connection between God and the Torah, and the second Baruch is the acknowledgement of the fact that you acknowledge that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the source of the Torah. And the result of the metzius of this fact is the following, is that when we talk about Keneged, Arba and Dibur Torah, this means, and this is a very fascinating concept, when the Torah says Kенeged, it's over here in the Sefer HaChinuch, the Torah says that the Lashon of Chazal is the Dibur Torah Ela Kенeged Yetzer Hara. This is by a fast Torah. I know it's a little bit way off topic, but I just want to show at least one other place where Chazal used the lashon. This is really the only other place that they use the lashon, and this is what they mean. They mean that so in other words, the idea of K'neged Yitzhar by the Yefas Toyar, which is the other main place that the Chazal uses lashon, is pshat that we actually let the person have relations with the non-Jewish woman because it's K'neged the Yitzhar, which means that we acknowledge the underlying existence of this thing and we allow it expression. And what this follows in our discussion is the fact that the Arba Banim that we're referring to over here and the side of it is the idea that these four types of people, well, let's start like this. It is based on the idea that on the Seder night, you are not coming to educate someone. You're not the side of Haggadah is not that you're coming to educate your children. That's a misunderstanding of the side of Haggadah. And what rather does Haggadah? What does it mean that you're being Magid? What does that mean? What is the taich of the mitzvah of Haggadah really? It's not educating. How do we know it's not educating? Because the mitzvah applies, as the Rambam says, even if there is no one but you. Right? This is based off the Gemara, etc. That the mitzvah of Agada applies even if you're yourself. You have to be magid to yourself. And therefore, it's obvious that the gedder of the mitzvah, that the understanding of the mitzvah is not education, because it doesn't require another person for you to be able to educate. Now you could say, okay, educate yourself, but that's not chinuch. And we know that that's not where the mitzvah in the Torah to educate your children comes from. Rather, that's v'shinantam levanecha, which is a whole different category and a whole different thing. It's a whole other mitzvah. But that is not this mitzvah. Rather, what is this mitzvah? We know that the yesod of Haggadah is that you're saying v'yigatal vincha, and you're saying ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li. That is ba'avur zeh. It's because of this that Hashem did this for me, that Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. And we see over here by Matan Torah, which is not a coincidence, it says Koisemar lebeis Yaakov v'sagedi bnei Yisrael, same shirish, Haggadah. Rashi says, what is the definition of sagedi bnei Yisrael? Anashim v'dekdukim perish lazcharim. Dvar makashem kegidim, things that are hard as sinews. Now, what is this concept? Things that are hard as sinews. What this means is a fascinating yesod, and this yesod is that the yesod of Haggadah is not you saying over something to your children. In fact, based on the halacha that you have to say even if you don't have any child, the way that you read is v'igata, and then the Haggadah that you did, that's the mitzvah v'igata, and then it's also levincha. You do the Haggadah also to your children, or the Haggadah also goes to your children. But the mitzvah of Haggadah is a standalone thing, because you do it even if you're on your own. So rather, what is the yesod of Haggadah? The yesod of Haggadah is, and this is what a person does when he does it on his own, is a declaration of self-expression in a solidifying manner, which you state the mitzias of what you are and what the main components of what you are, what those things are. That is the definition of Agada. Agada is a person making a statement and a testimony as to the nature of their most underlying being. That is the definition of Haggadah. So let's say that again. And this is very, very clear. And we know that actually, the famous halacha by Adam, that is kivan shehigir truv ein chayzer magid, that there is this idea of Haggadah, that an Haggadah is the relaying of information in a way that you say it as definitive, and you make a definitive statement. And so the halacha by Edom is that once you make a haggada, right? So you can't go back and remag it again, because the nature of haggada is that it is definitive. It is ending. It is done, complete. And the way that this ties in is that the goal on the night of the Seder is not to educate children. It is to reaffirm the most underlying sense of the reality of what you are, which, according to what we were talking about till now, with Cherus, makes exactly perfect sense. The reason why the Zman is a Zman of Cherus, which we said was the establishment of a self-identity, as opposed to being an Eved, which is working and having your entire life subsumed by aggrandizing the goals of others, is when you establish your own sense of identity. The way that you do that is through being Magid. You make a statement. And we actually find this by the Bikurim, which is where we find the Rami Avi Avi, which is, we also say this in Haggadah. And the Torah uses Lashon of Haggadah over there as well. But we're not going to get into that at the moment. But it is another right. And so therefore, the Ikr mitzvah in the Torah and the Ikr definition of Haggadah is someone, even if he's completely alone, no shaykhs to the child, makes a statement, and he makes a declaration, is what it is. I declare that this is what I am, and this is what my life is about. You know what I'm about? You know why God took me out? You know why I exist the way I exist? You know what my identity is? It is a relationship with Kadosh Baruch Hu and doing mitzvahs. Devarim akashim kegidim, they're hard as sinews, is because the pshat of kasha is addressing the most underlying. It's not pshat that it's hard meaning unpleasant. It's hard meaning it's the most solid aspect of the reality of what is. So if I ask you, what are you? What you're going to say is the things that comprise the most basic, real sense of what you are and what matters to you. And hopefully for people that will be their Jewish identity and what goes with that. And therefore, the Yesod of Haggadah is a declaration. That is the taich of the word Haggadah, and that is the mitzvah of Haggadah. And therefore, now you have to go all around like this. When we say in the Haggadah, and when the pasuk says in the Torah, "V'yigat levincha," the Torah is not saying educate your child. The Torah is not saying get him to do something, teach him how to understand and to think, and get him closer to the Torah and do kiruv on him. That's not the purpose. Rather, what is the idea? The idea is you should declare to yourself what you are, and you should do that in the presence of your child, so that your child knows and sees and experiences the reality of you as you are. And therefore you should declare what you are to your child, because he is your bane. He's the person who is going to go on. And therefore, it's not about educating the child. Agada is a mitzvah of self-expression. You express yourself. The Torah is telling you, self-express to your child. But it's not, the goal of the Agada is not, the emphasis is not on the child. The emphasis is on you, and then you should do that to your child. And this is a very, very, very important yesod. And you can look, it's paskin l'alach l'maisa. Haggadah applies if there is no child. So, therefore, we can now begin to understand the yesod over here. And we're going to answer the kasha, and we're going to understand the following. A chacham is not a tzaddik. Those are two separate things. What is the definition of a chacham? A chacham is a wise person. What is the definition of a wise person? A wise person is somebody who processes information in a manner which it can be utilized in a way which will be conducive to build. and to create. So when we say chachamim, that they're wise, we don't mean that they're the smartest. We don't mean that they have the highest IQ. We don't mean that they are, able to do a lot of cheshbon. That's not what chacham is. That's not what a chacham is. A wise person is not a smart person. Those are not the same thing. A chacham is specifically someone who can use the way in which he processes information in a manner in which he can build something up. He can contribute to the existence of the world in a manner which builds. It brings things forward. So you have a wise saying or something like that is a saying that usually speaks to an experiential reality, and therefore someone should know it because it's the way that things work. That's where you find wisdom much more. It's not someone who is a technical genius who can add a billion numbers up in 10 seconds. No one would say that person is wise. So, in other words, definition of wisdom is the ability to add up raw information in a manner in which it applies to reality, and when you apply it to the reality, it is conducive to your reality, and it helps you develop forward and better in life. And this is intuitive. I think everyone understands this to be the case. A Rasha is the opposite of a Chacham, because a Rasha is not somebody, definitely not in this context, and it could be not in general either. A Rasha is not the pshat that it's somebody who is evil, meaning that he has an evil intention, he wants to do the wrong thing, and he wants to, be terrible. A Rasha is the aside that a person, a being, processes information in a manner that the way that he utilizes it is destructive. We know that the I don't know if it's technically the shirish, but we know that Russia is Reish Ayin, which is Ra, right? And we know that in Chumash the opposite of Ra is Tov, and we discussed this. I think maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, that the yesod of Tov, when we looked at Bereshis, is completion, and the yesod of Ra is the opposite of that. So if Tov means something became complete, Ra would mean that it is destroyed. It's the opposite of being complete. It's actually breaking it down. So the aside of someone who is a Rasha is someone who processes information and is misnaheg, and he deals with things in a way which he desires to break them down and to destroy things, not to progress and add things up in a way that he will become more, will become better, will go forward, but rather to break things down, to destroy progress. And when we say progress, we mean towards the concept of makaim, which is the idea that everything is within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the goal is to come to an awareness of that completion, the completion of self, of a person. And we know over here that the Pasuk in Mishlei says, Hashem b'chachma, because we're talking about a chacham, it says Hashem b'chachma yasad aretz, konin shamayim mitzvuna. Rashi says Hashem b'chachma yasad aretz, what does that mean? Al pi Torah, v'hi Torah, v'hi tvuna, v'yivu adas, v'achash go'am nivra b'hem lekach. So Rashi says that the chachma means the Torah. And so over here you have the exact same yesod. Hashem b'chachma yasad aretz. What does that mean? That means the exact thing that we're talking. That's the exact same thing that we're talking about. B'chachma yasad aretz is the pshat that the yesod of chachma is the ability to interpret information in a manner that you will allow the person whom you are giving the information to reach a higher level of completion due to the way that you told them the information, which is chachma. The other way to really say it is that chachma would be a correct understanding of the breakdown of the existence of things and the way that they relate, and therefore the ability to show people how to go from one step to the other and what should relate to the other in order for it to be total. But that is the Yesod of a Chacham. The Yesod of a Rasha is someone who processes information and has a desire to destroy and to break things down. And therefore, what we have over here is the following. We have that it is perfectly normal for a Chacham. The Chacham is already acknowledging, he's saying, Hashem Elokeinu. Right? So the Chacham in this scenario acknowledges that there is a God and that he is his God, which, by the way, many would say that those two things are premises for being a Chacham, period. Because otherwise, if you don't acknowledge those two things, that there is an Hashem and that he is our God, then there is no room for Chachma, because you're left to a sense of randomness which inherently defies the idea that things have a specific setup and that therefore are meant to go somewhere. So, but that's an interesting ha'ara in and of itself. But he says eschem as well. So, but that is not wrong or inappropriate. In other words, this person doesn't know, you know what I'm saying? He doesn't, could be he's not even commanded yet if he's not 13, or could be he is commanded but he hasn't yet understood, how he's included and, what it means that he's included. And therefore, he does view himself as not being part of the commandment yet. He doesn't view himself as being part of the commandment yet. He's new to it, and that's why he's asking about it. The point is that the question, it's not pshat that there's a difference in the Chacham and the Rasha in the actual nusach of the question they're asking. The pshat is that the Chacham, because he acknowledges Hashem Elokeinu, even though he's saying Eschem, he's saying you, but the Hashem Elokeinu is a megala milsa on what he wants out of the question that he's asking Eschem. He is asking Eschem because he genuinely wants to know how he's to be included in the mitzvah, because he already acknowledged that there's Hashem and Elokeinu. He wants to know, how does Pesach contribute to the overall, understanding of the Eidos and the Chukim and the Mishpatim. And how does Pesach, how is Pesach part of that? So, the answer, now according to Rav in the Gemara in Pesachim, is a halacha that a chabura, which it used to be with, the group of people that would count themselves onto a specific Korban Pesach, once they finished the Korban Pesach, they were not allowed to leave that Korban Pesach and go to a different Korban Pesach. And so it could very well be that the idea over here is that when he is saying Eschem, we're trying to show him that he is included in the mitzvah of the Karban, and it's not Eschem, he is also included in it, because of the fact that we see that once you have the menorah and the chabura, they have to stick together and they can't go to another chabura. They can't leave. They have to stick together within the mitzvah. So the mitzvah itself also has this idea of them sticking together. Okay, that needs work. So, fine. So now let's go on to the Rasha. The Rasha says, okay, so so for that, we have a very interesting thing here. We have the Gemara, the Mishnah Navas. The Mishnah Navas says that Hillel says, Al Tifresh Minat Tzibur, and the Bartanura says on that, if you're parish from the Tzibur, you don't see in the Nechama of the Tzibur, and that's a Gemara in Tainus. Gemara in Tainus says the following thing. If the Yisrael is Shreim B'tzar, and one of them was Pirish from Israel. So he took himself out of the cloud. So the Rashi on this says that these Shnei Malchei are referring to what? To the pasuk. It says Ki malacha v'tzabalach, that every person has two malachim that are mitzavehim, that are malavehim, and those two malachim, they say that you should not be Rebbe Nechamas Tzibur. And if you go to this pasuk of Ki malacha v'tzabalach in Tehillim, it says the Hashem is Ki malacha v'tzabalach lishmarcha, to guard you, bechol derachecha, in all of your ways. And if we want to get a little bit into the depth of what this means, what we have to understand is that the derech, the yesod of derech, and this yesod is the yesod that encompasses the entire Torah, and it encompasses the entire message of Amar Avinu. And the Rambam is famously known as that the person has two drachim that they can go. You got to be a tzaddik Moshe Rabbeinu or Rashi Gerim ben Avat, and that is that the concept of being shomer Torah and being a chacham and of Judaism in general is that it is a derech, it's a path. It is not a stagnant thing, it's a path that you go on, a path that a person chooses. And what is this path? The concept over here is that the concept of the path is inherent within it, that a person is going forward. He's going from one place to another, to another, to another, to another, and he's growing all the time. That is the yesod of a path, that there's constant movement towards something. A path goes towards a location. That's the point of a path. And so a chacham, as somebody who is adding up information and processing information in a manner that adds up and leads towards something, which we said is the taich of what wisdom really is somebody who has a derech. He has something called a derech. And since he has something called a derech, therefore, he is shayach to the malach v'tzabalach, and he's not parish ashlei min haklal. What the Rasha did when he was parish min haklal kafar be'ikr, we see in these different sources, and what this really means is that the Rasha completely removes himself from the concept of having a path, because he closed himself off to the idea of being part of something which is greater than himself. So if someone genuinely believes that there is nothing greater than himself in existence, then he essentially has no way forward. There is no purpose or meaning to his life in going forward. There's no steps, there's no evolution, because all there is him, and therefore he already exists in the format that he exists, and therefore that's all that matters, and if that's all that matters, and growth is inherently unnecessary, because there is nothing more than that. And if there is nothing more than that, then that is kfira be'ikr. So in other words, the idea of a merge yourself from a klal is inherently kfir be'ikr, because being part of a klal means that you participate on an identity level. You realize and you function not as an individual only, but as an individual who is part of a greater people and purpose, etc., which those things go together. You can't really view yourself as being part of a greater people without being part of a greater purpose, because purpose is what unites more than one person to be with another person. So purpose is essentially the magic glue that makes people come together to do a specific thing. So by definition, you can't be part of a people if you also don't have a purpose behind that, which makes it that you would have connection to the other person or other people that you think that you're a part of. So being part of another people inherently goes with that you also are part of a purpose, a greater purpose than yourself. And the reason why you're Makah Hashinav, and you say, if you were there, you wouldn't have been Iga, and the reason why you're doing that is because this is a geder of Vihigadata, not of Vishinantam Lefanecha. This is not you teaching your child. If you're teaching your child, of course, teach your child. On Pesach night, it is extremely important and integral that you have a genuine, real, emotional statement made that is a genuine expression of the being that you are. And if you have someone, a Bain who is not interested in being part of anything more than he is, then as a chilik of your Haggadah, you would say, okay, you're not interested? Then you're not part of it. Because your goal is not to include anybody. Your goal is to make a statement about the reality of what you are. If the Russia is not interested in being what you are, and the entire thing that you're doing here is expressing what you are, then that is to the exclusion of him, period. And that is the aside of why we say this to the Russia, the haggada levincha. And in fact, the reason you see it even clearer, because the pasuk of the haggada levincha is the pasuk that Chazal used for you to darshan the answer to the Russia. Right? It says haggada levincha, which is the whole mitzvah of Haggadah, but ba'avor zeh Hashem li b'teisi mitzrayim. And this is the pasuk that's brought li v'loy in the Haggadah. So you see that the haggada is keneged the Russia specifically. Which is the exact same pasuk. Very good.